The Nowata Methodist Church is happy to produce a lot of different content for the edification of Christ's church throughout the world. This daily segment that you're listening to right now corresponds with the Daily Bible Reading Challenge, which is hosted by Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho. If you want to download the list of readings that they publish for yourself or learn more about this challenge, this initiative, go to BibleReading.ChristKirk.com. I'm Jeffrey Rickman. I'm the pastor here in Nowata, and I read from the Berean Standard Bible, which you can also find at Berean.Bible. Consider subscribing to this podcast to be a part of this daily effort to grow in familiarity with and love of God's holy word. Let's dive in for today. Hey there, I'm Jeffrey Rickman. I'm the preacher here, and I've been doing this Bible reading program. Happy to have you be a part of it. If this is your first time, don't worry about going back, although you can if you want to, but just stick with me now. Subscribe wherever you're seeing this, and then just come along for the ride. We're going a lot further with this. We're going to read the whole Bible, and it's a good thing to do, so I hope you'll join me. All right, let's get in where we left off. We are at Exodus 14. Listen to the word of the Lord. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. You are to encamp by the sea directly opposite Baal-Zephon. For Pharaoh will say of the Israelites, they are wandering in the land of confusion. The wilderness has boxed them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart so that he will pursue them. But I will gain honor by means of Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord." So this is what the Israelites did. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, "What have we done? We have released Israel from serving us." So Pharaoh prepared his chariot and took his army with him. He took 600 of the best chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites, who were marching out defiantly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and the chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pi-hahiroth, opposite Baal-Zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up and saw the Egyptians marching after them, and they were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us into the wilderness to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Did we not say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone so that we may serve the Egyptians'? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." But Moses told the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the Lord's salvation, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward. And as for you, lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. And I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. Then I will gain honor by means of Pharaoh and all his army and chariots and horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I am honored through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." And the angel of God, who had gone before the camp of Israel, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from before them and stood behind them, so that it came between the camps of Egypt and Israel. The cloud was there in the darkness, but it lit up in the night. So all the night long neither camp went near the other. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove back the sea with a strong east wind that turned it into dry land. So the waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with walls of water on their right and on their left. And the Egyptians chased after them, all Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen, and followed them into the sea. At morning watch, however, the Lord looked down on the army of the Egyptians from the pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw their camp into confusion. He caused their chariot wheels to wobble so that they had difficulty driving. "Let us flee from the Israelites," said the Egyptians, "for the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea returned to its normal state. As the Egyptians were retreating, the Lord swept them into the sea. The waters flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had chased the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites had walked through the sea on dry ground with walls of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the shore. When Israel saw the great power that the Lord had exercised over the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and believed in him and in his servant Moses. Exodus 15. Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. "I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and army he has cast into the sea. The finest of his officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The depths have covered them. They sank there like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, is majestic in power. Your right hand, O Lord, has shattered the enemy. You overthrew your adversaries by your great majesty. You unleashed your burning wrath. It consumed them like stubble. At the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. Like a wall, the current stood firm. The depths congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy declared, "I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoils, I will gorge myself on them, I will draw my sword, my hand will destroy them." But you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who among the gods is like you, O Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, revered with praises, performing wonders? You stretched out your right hand, and the earth swallowed them up. With loving devotion, you will lead the people you have redeemed. With your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and tremble. Anguish will grip the dwellers of Philistia. Then the chiefs of Edom will be dismayed. Trembling will seize the leaders of Moab. Those who dwell in Canaan will melt away, and terror and dread will fall upon them. By the power of your arm, they will be as still as a stone until your people pass by, O Lord, until the people you have bought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance. The place, O Lord, you have prepared for your dwelling, the sanctuary, O Lord, your hands have established. The Lord will reign forever and ever. For when Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women followed her with tambourines and dancing. And Miriam sang back to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they walked in the desert without finding water. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink the water there because it was bitter. That is why it was named Marah. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" And Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a log. And when he cast it into the waters, they were sweetened. There the Lord made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he tested them, saying, "If you will listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his eyes, and pay attention to his commands, and keep all his statutes, then I will not bring on you any of the diseases I inflicted on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you." Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped there by the waters. Exodus 16. On the 15th day of the second month after they had left the land of Egypt, the whole congregation of Israel set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. And there in the desert they all grumbled against Moses and Aaron. "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt," they said. "There we sat by pots of meat and ate our fill of bread. But you have brought us into this desert to starve this whole assembly to death." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. Each day the people are to go out and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test whether or not they will follow my instructions. Then on the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on the other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "This evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the Lord's glory, because he has heard your grumbling against him. For who are we that you should grumble against us?" And Moses added, "The Lord will give you meat to eat this evening and bread to fill you in the morning, for he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? Your grumblings are not against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Tell the whole congregation of Israel, come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling." And as Aaron was speaking to the whole congregation of Israel, they looked toward the desert, and there in a cloud the glory of the Lord appeared. Then the Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God." That evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew had evaporated, there were thin flakes on the desert floor, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they asked one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. So Moses told them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Each one of you is to gather as much as he needs. You may take an omer for each person in your tent." So the Israelites did this. Some gathered more, and some less. When they measured it by the omer, he who gathered much had no excess, and he who gathered little had no shortfall. Each one gathered as much as he needed to eat. Then Moses said to them, "No one may keep any of it until morning." But they did not listen to Moses. Some people left part of it until morning, and it became infested with maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Every morning each one gathered as much as was needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much food, 2 omers per person, and all the leaders of the congregation came and reported this to Moses. He told them, "This is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is to be a day of complete rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil, then set aside whatever remains and keep it until morning." So they set it aside until morning as Moses had commanded, and it did not smell or contain any maggots. "Eat it today," Moses said, "because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find anything in the field. For 6 days you may gather, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, it will not be there. Yet on the seventh day, some of the people went out to gather, but they did not find anything. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commandments and instructions? Understand that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the sixth day he will give you bread for 2 days. On the seventh day, everyone must stay where he is. No one may leave his place." So the people rested on the seventh day. Now the house of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Keep an omer of manna for the generations to come, so that they may see the bread I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you out of the land of Egypt." So Moses told Aaron, "Take a jar and fill it with an omer of manna, then place it before the Lord to be preserved for the generations to come." And Aaron placed it in front of the testimony to be preserved just as the Lord had commanded Moses. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a land where they could settle. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. Now an omer is a tenth of an ephah. Exodus 17. Then the whole congregation of Israel left the desert of Sin, moving from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So the people contended with Moses. "Give us water to drink." "Why do you contend with me?" Moses replied. "Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. "Why have you brought us out of Egypt? To make us and our children and livestock die of thirst." Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What should I do with these people? A little more and they will stone me." And the Lord said to Moses, "Walk on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take along in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb, and when you strike the rock, water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. He named the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" After this, the Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on the hilltop with the staff of God in my hand." Joshua did as Moses had instructed him and fought against the Amalekites while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, Israel prevailed, but when he lowered them, Amalek prevailed. When Moses' hands grew heavy, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Then Aaron and Hur held his hands up, each one on each side, so that his hands remained steady until the sun went down. So Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this on a scroll as a reminder and recite it to Joshua, because I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven." And Moses built an altar and named it, "The Lord is my banner." Indeed, he said, a hand was lifted up toward the throne of the Lord. The Lord will war against Amalek from generation to generation. Exodus 18. Now Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian, heard about all that God had done for Moses and his people Israel, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent back his wife Zipporah, his father-in-law, Jethro, had received her along with her 2 sons. One son was named Gershom, for Moses had said, "I have been a foreigner in a foreign land." The other son was named Eleazar, for Moses had said, "The God of my father was my helper and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh." Moses' father-in-law Jethro, along with Moses' wife and sons, came to him in the desert, where he was encamped at the mountain of God. He sent word to Moses, "I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons." So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. They greeted each other and went into the tent. Then Moses recounted to his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardships they had encountered along the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. And Jethro rejoiced over all the good things that the Lord had done for Israel, whom he had rescued from the hand of the Egyptians. Jethro declared, "Blessed be the Lord, who has delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and of Pharaoh, and who has delivered the people from the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the other gods, for he did this when they treated Israel with arrogance." Then Moses' father-in-law Jethro brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. The next day Moses took his seat to judge the people, and they stood around him from morning until evening. Then his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people. He asked, "What is this that you're doing for all the people? Why do you sit alone as judge with all the people standing around you from morning till evening?" "Because the people come to me to inquire of God," Moses replied. "Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me to judge between one man and another, and I make known to them the statutes and laws of God." But Moses' father-in-law said to him, "What you are doing is not good. Surely you and these people with you will wear yourselves out, because the task is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their causes to him. Teach them the statutes and laws, and show them the way to live and the work they must do. Furthermore, select capable men from among the people, God-fearing, trustworthy men who are averse to dishonest gain. Appoint them over the people as leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. Have these men judge the people at all times. Then they can bring you any major issue, but all minor cases they can judge on their own, so that your load may be lightened as they share it with you. If you follow this advice and God directs you, then you will be able to endure, and all these people can go home in peace." Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. So Moses chose capable men from all Israel and made them heads over the people as leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. And they judged the people at all times. They would bring the difficult cases to Moses, but any minor issue they would judge themselves. Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own land. All right, that's it for Exodus today, and now we just do Psalm 90. A prayer of Moses, the man of God. Lord, you have been our dwelling place through all generations. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You return man to dust, saying, "Return, O sons of mortals. For in your sight 1,000 years are but a day that passes, or a watch of the night. You whisk them away in your sleep. They are like the new grass of the morning. In the morning it springs up new, but by evening it fades and withers. For we are consumed by your anger and terrified by your wrath. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. For all our days decline in your fury. We finish our years with a sigh. The length of our days is 70 years, or 80 if we are strong. Yet their pride is but labor and sorrow, for they quickly pass and we fly away. Who knows the power of your anger? Your wrath matches the fear you are due. So teach us to number our days, that we may present a heart of wisdom. Return, O Lord. How long will it be? Have compassion on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your loving devotion, that we may sing for joy and be glad all our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, for as many years as we have seen evil. May your work be shown to your servants and your splendor to their children. May the favor of the Lord our God rest upon us. Establish for us the work of our hands. Yes, establish the work of our hands. That's the word of the Lord. It's a blessing to spend time in God's word together. You're gracious to put up with me being an imperfect reader. I hope you've benefited from knowing more of the particulars around these stories. And if you had never heard it before, I hope it made an impression on you. If you had heard it before, but you kind of forgotten some of those details, it's good to brush up on them. So I hope it's been a blessing to you. I would tell you to join me tomorrow, but you can't. There's on Sundays, they never have a reading. So the clear intent is that you join a local covenant community where you're reviewing God's word together. And of course, that's a church. So I hope you're going to church tomorrow. God bless you. See ya.